Hey guys, it's me Matt with another video on game design, but this time we're going offline. As you may know by now, I love role-playing games. And if you're a fan, you've probably tried out different systems like Dungeons & Dragons or Call of Cthulhu. And if you've been playing or DMing an adventure using a system that is based on the Savage Worlds framework, chances are you have been cheated. Accidentally. This is due to the exploding dice feature, also known as acing, where you can reroll if you hit the highest number on your dice. Unfortunately, this introduces some problems in terms of fairness. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, here's an example why it's broken. In Savage Worlds, your standard threshold to succeed at a check is as high as the number 3, meaning that you have to roll at least a 4 to succeed. Or higher, of course. So, say our party consists of a big, strong dude who's got a d8 to work with. And an absolute wimp, but at least he's got a baseball bat, so he gets a d6. Let's give our heroes an easy task. Say, slay a dragon. Alright. It's a small dragon. Standard skill check, you need to roll a 4 or higher. The strong warrior has a good chance of hitting the dragon. He has an 8-sided die, and he only fails on a 1, 2 or 3, which means he got 5 out of 8 to work with, or a 62.5% chance of success. Meanwhile, the wimp is struggling a little more with only 3 out of 6, which is only a 50% chance of success. Everything's fine so far, he's supposed to be a little weaker, nothing's broken yet. So let's say both roll a 4 and everything is fine. Then in comes a slightly bigger dragon that is harder to beat. Savage Worlds handles a harder check by giving the player a penalty or a modifier of -2, -4 and so on. Let's say this one is a -4 to hit. So the player has to roll an 8 or higher. This is where our weak fighter can't keep up anymore. He has to rely on the exploding dice feature where he can reroll if he hits the highest number. He also has his wildcard die, but since everyone has it, I'll leave it out of the equation for now. So strong fighter is struggling, but he rolls his highest number, which is an 8, and succeeds at the check. He got lucky since his chance of success was only 12.5%. The weaker fighter also gets lucky because he rolls a 6, gets a reroll, and rolls a 2. He also barely succeeds at the check, even though his chances of success were only 13.89. That's right, the weaker fighter with the lower dice actually has a better chance of success. Here's why. This simple table shows the minimum number you have to roll in order to succeed on the left, and the dice you are using to do so on top, from d4 to d12. Let's play the percentages. Obviously you can't roll less than a 1, so your chance to roll a 1 is always 100%. These are the percentages of hitting a certain number with your dice, and here's the standard difficulty of 4. Even though there's a large discrepancy between d6 and d4, so far all is fair and square. Literally. Get it? Because it's dice? I'll see myself out. Technically we could stop here and not use the exploding dice feature at all, but apart from the wildcard die it would render a weak character almost useless, and a -4 or higher check would be impossible for that character, so I would not recommend that from a gameplay perspective. With the exploding dice feature, however, everyone has a chance, because as soon as you roll the highest number on your die, you can reroll it. While this is a great and fun feature, it's broken in exactly the wrong places. Namely all even numbers, the ones that you are using when imposing a penalty or disadvantage on the player. This is because you still have a 100% chance to roll a 1, so you basically get 1 point for free. As you can see here, for every even number, the dice corresponding to those numbers actually have a worse chance of success than the dice below it. Now you might say this is not a problem because it's only 2% off. But it's actually not. It's more like 10% and more. If, for example, we need to roll a check with a penalty of 2, we need to hit the number 6. Now look at this row. Look at the gaps in between those numbers. Coming from the right, there's always about a 10% difference or even more between the dice. So the d4 is actually way too strong because it should be about 10% worse than the d6. So the overall discrepancy is more like 12%, which is still not game breaking, but quite a lot. And if you think everyone has a wildcard die and that makes up for it, think again, because the wildcard die is a d6. The only die in the game that has the lowest chance of hitting its own highest number. And what's the most common penalty in the game? You guessed it, -2 or 6. And regardless of that, what the wildcard die does in the game is basically flattening the curve and making sure you don't fail all the time. Which is also an aspect of the game that some people criticize because a lot of the characters would appear bland. It takes away from the diversity of the characters. However, that's not necessarily my criticism. But let's look at this table for a moment. Even factoring in the wildcard die, the d4 is still 2% stronger and should be some percent weaker. Now, 10% off on only a couple of target numbers is far from a broken game. But if you've ever felt like the lower dice are cheating, it's because they are. So it's really up to you whether you want to be indifferent about it or employ a fix. And there are several very easy fixes. Here's the most quick and dirty one I came up with, that literally requires no effort during the game from your players. While you can still use a 4 as a basis for a normal check because all the percentages work out, if you want to impose a penalty on the player, you have to use uneven numbers, and then it stays fair. I personally would even prefer to use the 3 as the standard check, but it should be an easy one. Think of it as, instead of going 4 is a normal task, 6 hard task, 8 really hard task, you go like 3 easy task, 5 is kind of challenging task, 7 is a difficult task, and so on. The game doesn't get more difficult, it just alternates between a little harder and a little easier. The only downside of using uneven numbers is that it requires a little more brain power of your GM, rewriting all the standard checks in the adventure to a 3 or 5, and then you will need maybe 1 session to get used to it. I'm saying this is the quickest and dirtiest fix because it only fixes normal checks. As soon as you introduce modifiers or you roll against the parry value of another wildcard, this whole thing goes straight back to broken. There is another fix that I actually like more. Basically, whenever you reroll a dice, you have to subtract 1 from the final result. This really fixes everything, but it also involves some more math, which is not for everyone. Finally, there are solutions involving fudge dice, but I personally am not a fan of those, and I think it's not worth the hassle introducing another dice when you have other easy fixes. So yeah, pick your favorite or keep the game as it is. Like I said, this is nowhere near a game-breaking bug, it just introduces some randomness and unfairness. I'm gonna be introducing my own pen and paper system soon on this channel, so if you are interested in trying something new, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get notified. I also have a Patreon now, so if you like my videos and you want to support me, that's patreon.com/mattmuffin, links in the description. That's all for today. You can follow me on Instagram for channel updates and some dank memes. I hope I'll see you for my next video, it's gonna be a big one. Till then, have a wonderful time, stay safe, Muffin out.